Phil with Crystal in the studio today talking school board elections. It's that time of year. It's election season. And today I'm with Pat Moser, right?
Yes.
All right, Pat. Well, thanks to you for coming in and making time to talk a little bit.
Well, thank you for having me.
Of course. Good to have you in here. And Pat, just wanted to know a little bit about you first. Tell me about your background, where you live, and how long you've been in Summit, all that good stuff.
I live in Silverthorne. I live directly across the street from my daughter and son-in-law and my new 7-month-old grandson. And I moved up here August of last year to be closer to them and to experience my first grandchild. My background, 35 years in public education, high school English teacher, middle school principal of an academically award-winning middle school, a district-wide staff development director, recruiter for, at the time, the fastest-growing school district in Texas. We were opening between 5 and 7 schools a year for a decade. So I know we have an attraction and retention issue up here. So my recruiting experience, I think, can help. And then 10 years in the education department at the University of Texas in Dallas, and have trained hundreds of young educators.
Cool. What district were you working for when you were a principal and all that?
I was principal in Allen School District and was staff development director and recruiting director in the Frisco School District, both of those districts north of Dallas.
The Frisco, Texas.
Frisco, Texas.
All right.
Yes. Thank you for clarifying
that. One that we always hear about all the time. Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. Up here in town. My aunt has been working in public schools for decades and decades in the Lockhart, Texas area. I'm not sure exactly what district that is, but yeah, Lockhart, Texas.
Down in the Austin area, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. And she's been doing that for ages and ages.
What does she teach?
She never taught. She was always admin.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Always doing administration and like upper level district
good for her.
Stuff. Yeah, well, good. So you got some deep background with public school and but relatively new to Summit County.
Yes.
Since you've been here in Summit, I guess what is it that interested you in running for Summit School Board specifically?
Well, the first thing I would have to say is just meeting my neighbors and hearing what I thought was an abnormally high number of just concerns and complaints, anywhere from their perception, I'm just sharing with you, their perception, lack of, for example, dyslexia services, mismanagement of hard-earned tax dollars, lack of transparency, parents feeling like they weren't being heard, feeling disenfranchised, and I thought to myself, okay, that's their perception. But then when I saw the scores come out, and then I wanted to say, okay, well, that's COVID. But then I took a deeper look back, and this is a years-long slide in scores. So COVID certainly didn't help anything. It was a challenge that we'll have to overcome the learning loss there. But so we can't just blame the downward slide on COVID. So that's when my experience started kicking in and saying, what's going on here? And honestly, I don't know the answers, but there's an apparent breakdown somewhere, maybe multiple breakdowns. Okay. So I may not have all the answers right now because I'm not on, quote, the inside, but I do know what questions to ask. Okay. Because I think in this district, these scores are unacceptable, and I think we're obviously doing a disservice to our children, and by extension, their parents, and by extension, the taxpayers.
Okay. What are some of those questions that you would be asking, either at, say, a candidate forum, or even if you were elected to board? What are some of those questions?
I'd be asking about the support for the teachers. I'd be asking about professional development. And are we focusing our professional development on content and most recent research on learning and how people learn and retain information? I don't know exactly what our professional development topics are. That would be the first thing. I'd also take a deep dive into the budget and look at how money is being spent. And I feel like every penny should be instructionally spent,
Okay.
not on non-instructional issues. And I think every question I would ask would be, how does this serve kids? How does this serve kids? How does this serve kids? Okay. And if there is not a very clear-cut answer to how that expenditure helps kids, then I'd say let's table it and let's talk about it.
Okay. Great.
And I think transparency. I think we should be putting the curriculum online. I think parents shouldn't have to worry about what's being taught in the classroom because these are their children.
Okay.
And I would think the really good teachers, the confident teachers, shouldn't have a problem with that.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, seems like Summit has had a retention issue, a turnover issue. At least from the numbers that I've seen, it's no worse or better than all of Colorado. I think I've heard like lately, the low teens, 11, 12, 13%, which is just barely below state average. I guess coming from Texas, what's teacher retention like where you're from?
It depends on the district, and it depends on the efforts that the districts make to retain. I know there's one district in the Dallas area that significantly pays higher than the surrounding districts, and yet they have a high turnover rate for a variety of reasons. I know in my last district, we addressed this. This was the district where we were opening 5 to 6 to 7 schools a year, so we really needed teachers and had to compete with the other districts. And we created our own district daycare program for district employees, and it was an amazing success. Amazing success. The teachers loved it. So I think that's something we could look at.
Okay. So it's not necessarily just cash that will keep teachers around. It's maybe the other things, the services, the stuff that even goes beyond 401k. Okay. It's
quality of life. It's in fact. I know from experience, teachers become like second family to each other. But if there's a revolving door, it's hard to keep those relationships intact when your second family is constantly in turmoil and turning over.
Okay. Yeah.
And I just think for a variety of reasons, we need to recruit and find a way to keep the best teachers.
Okay, great.
And yes, we are competing with the other districts, absolutely.
Yeah, and that is true. As competition is tough, and then also some of those other factors that are just unique to resort towns and resort counties and communities. Lots of stuff that teachers are up against and admins are up against too, as they try to keep that revolving door a little shut.
Yeah. And I don't know, and maybe we have, but have we really just sat down and asked the teachers? And what about the teachers who interview with us and we give them an offer and they don't accept? Have we gone back and asked them why? Why didn't you accept our offer? We made you an offer. And whatever their reason is, it's okay, but have we asked? I don't know the answer though.
Okay. But willing to learn.
Oh, huge learning curve, I'm sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, great. Let's see here. We touched on this already. Your top 3 priorities, like you were saying, the questions that you would ask to me, that sounds like, your sort of top priorities if elected to the board. What are your thoughts on the board's current, strategic plan? They have been working through a strategic plan now, through the midst of COVID. They were also trying to do some strategic planning about, guiding the district. What are your thoughts on that sort of, those umbrella documents for a board?
I think, of course, any organization, if they want to stay in business, has to have a strategic plan. And we've got to be forward-looking. And so I applaud the district for having that. I question if it's pie in the sky and not more directed at boots on the ground and more specific. I think the big picture's okay, but I haven't seen a plan for implementation. And I think those should go hand in hand. I don't think having a strategic plan without plans for implementation seems to be an incomplete plan.
Yeah, and one of the things I hear is, of course, with lots of strategic planning, or even, I'm thinking of like tax initiatives, is that people want to see, goals laid out, and then they also want to see some sort of assessment, some way to see that those goals are being met and reached, and that, like you said, it's not just pie in the sky, grasping at straws, trying to make something happen. What's a good example of, assessment for, say, test scores? for student achievement. Is standardized testing the best way to assess whether or not kids are getting, the right education?
I don't think test scores are the end all be all.
Okay.
But I do think they are important because they give us a snapshot in time of where our children are on their skills and their improvement level or lack thereof. So while I don't think they're end all be all, I do think they're important.
Okay.
And I don't think we can be complacent. And looking at the scores and the downward trend since before COVID should create a sense of urgency. Okay. And I don't see that sense of urgency. And I think, there's a competitive world out there waiting on our children when they graduate, whatever they choose to do. And I have concerns that we're adequately preparing them. And I'm all about accountability. And I think scores are one measure of accountability. And with a downward trend, with no end in sight, that gives me a great deal of concern.
Okay. Just a few more questions for you. We of course you can't come into the school board without hearing about the superintendent drama that we've been having. We had a longtime superintendent, and then we had a new super that was in for less than a year, and now we have Super Crawford. Your experience with superintendents in the past, how does that inform the role of a superintendent and how you would work with a superintendent to meet some of these goals?
That's one of the major reasons I'm running, is I want a voice in picking the next superintendent, hoping that one will be long-term, because right now we're on our third superintendent in 3 years. Our current superintendent is interim, so by this time next year we will be on our fourth superintendent in 4 years. That is going to hurt any organization. So I do want a voice in that. I want a superintendent who has a track record of academics improvement, somebody who's a good listener and knows how and is willing to hold people accountable, including himself, herself.
Okay.
And I think accountability is huge. And again, I don't know where the breakdown is, but there's a breakdown somewhere, or we wouldn't be having these low scores and the frustration that is out in the community. I want somebody who is wise about expenditures and the budget.
Okay.
And is the money going toward academics or being sidelined on other endeavors?
Okay. What are some other things that you've seen money go into here at Summit Schools that don't directly relate to academics?
Well, in fact, there was an article, I believe it was June 7th in the paper, I could be wrong on that, that laid out the last superintendent, I will use your word, the drama, who is here less than a year, at a very nice salary, which, okay, the job is a hard job, but he's less than a year before the same board that hired him then fired him and then spent tons of thousands of dollars for him to go away a month early.
Okay.
And now we got to start the process over again. So now we have our superintendent for 1 year, and now we're going to, I would assume, pay a search firm to now get our fourth superintendent in 4 years. And to me, that kind of stuff, having to spend money on, for example, legal fees to defend some of the decisions that the district has made, or to make problems go away. I'm not privy to all the details of that drama that took place, but it just, I think how many bus drivers or paraprofessionals we could hire with the money that has been spent on non-instructional, in my opinion, self-inflicted wounds.
Yeah, some of that stuff reminded me of when I first started. I was working over in Avon, and Avon was in a years-long legal battle with a subdivision that stole Walmart, basically. And so they were spending upwards of $1 million every single year on legal fees to try and fight for this subdivision to be annexed, when the subdivision had their own lawyers fighting stuff, and it went on and on and on and on. And finally, it did lead to the resignation of the town manager, but basically he was forced out because he was the one who caused this issue. And so I guess, luckily Summit Schools, this superintendent drama, it didn't last for years and years and years, at least. Yeah.
Thank goodness.
But yeah, it does remind me of some other things that I've seen that, there are times when, unfortunately, lawsuits and legal proceedings and all that stuff, it eats up a lot of money. And that's why,
and time and energy that could be better spent.
Yeah, that's
elsewhere.
The truth. And that's why I want to cover, the school board, is because, lots of people say, well, I don't have a kid in the school district. But if you own property here, you pay into the school district, and you pay a pretty penny. You pay quite a bit. I think it's over $70 million worth of tax collections for the district this year. One of the highest they've ever gotten. And like you were saying, you're looking for fiscal responsibility, putting that money to good use that will actually be seen in our students.
Well, yes, that's kind of why we open the doors every day, I thought. And if I were a taxpayer, and even if I didn't have children in the schools, I'm a believer in it takes a village philosophy. And if taxpayers are out there saying, what am I getting for my money? I kind of get that. Okay. And if we could see, and the scores are not going to turn around overnight. They are absolutely not. I think it's ridiculous to think that they would. But we've got to at least reverse the downward trend. Okay. And I feel 100% that my experience can help with that. Am I going to fix it all by myself? Absolutely not. After 35 years, I thought I was done. But I just can't sit on the sidelines when I know I could help. And that's all I want to do is help. I have no political aspirations or agendas. I just see an issue that I know I could help with. Okay. And Silverthorne and Summit County are my home now. And if I can help, I feel like I have an ethical obligation to do so.
Speaking of politics, that brings me to the last thing. You're running with a slate of other candidates. Why run as a collection of candidates?
That's interesting how that came about. It's just serendipity, I think. I knew Kim through a book club, and she knew Manuela because their kids go to the same school. And then Manuela, I was trying to think of how it all came together, but it's just like one of us said, hey, I'm thinking about running for the school board, and the other one said, really, so am I. And then we said, oh, no, we don't want to wade into that. And then the more we talked and the more we looked at our backgrounds and the more we knew we were like-minded in our goals for our children and our schools, we said, okay, let's do it. And then we can share ideas if we run as a slate. We can share strategies. We can share maybe articles that we've read. It just kind of, we said, why go our separate paths when we're all so like-minded? Let's just run it as a slate. It doesn't mean all four of us or any of us are going to get elected, and support for each other, too. Mm-hmm. It's been a wonderful experience. Great. They're good women, and I'm proud to be on a slate with them.
All right. And I look forward to talking to everybody else on the slate, and, of course, everybody else running for board. And, Pat, I think that's all I had for you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Any final thoughts?
No, go to 4 for the Kids and find out more about us. And if you are philosophically on board, we'd appreciate your vote.
All right, of course. Well, Pat Moser here on Crystal 93, talking school board.